Everyone, the jury took about 6 hours over 2 days to reach its recommendations.
Those recommendations were unanimous and identical. Jurors deciding 12-0 that Danny Rolling should die in the electric chair. We'll have reaction from the victims' families and the University of Florida campus in just a moment. But our team coverage begins with the decision and Channel 4's Ari Anzer. Ari?
Tony, even Rolling's lawyers admitted they had virtually no chance to squeeze any sympathy out of this jury for Danny Rolling. They said that Rolling fully expected to one day face a death sentence for the horrific crimes he committed here 3.5 years ago.
Indictment.
Danny Rolling said he killed 5 students to send a message to Gainesville. Today, the jury sent a message to Danny Rolling.
A majority of the jury, by a vote of 12-0, advise and recommend to the court that it impose the death penalty upon Danny Harold Rolling.
Unanimous death recommendations for each of Rolling's murders.
Danny Rolling, for whatever reason, and it's far beyond what I'll ever understand, decided to visit horror on this town and on these students in ways that it's unimaginable.
Rolling terrorized his victims: Sonia Larson, Christina Powell, Krista Hoyt, Manny Tabuada, and Tracy Paulus. The jury saw graphic evidence of Rolling's crimes, saw how Rolling planned his murders, saw that Danny Rolling, his victims, saw. The prosecutor says defense arguments that Rolling was mentally ill stood no chance when weighed against Rolling's crimes.
And there was not enough there in I think, the view of the overwhelming number of people. There was just not enough there to overcome these kinds of crimes. You know, we might have been talking about a bad home life. Well, this wasn't the Menendez brothers being replayed about some young boy who shoots daddy or mama or whatever. This is a man who'd been away from home, 36 years old, and killed strangers and killed them in a brutal and terrifying fashion. And I don't think that there was much question which way this case was going to go unless we tripped and fell.
Rolling's lawyers said he knew his case was a long shot, especially with a jury he considers to have been unfair.
There was an overbearing community pressure on any jurors in this community to return a death recommendation. To say that these individuals personally were not fair, that they didn't try hard, would just be wrong. It's certainly not true at all. But I do feel that they are influenced, as anyone would be, by the fact that this community has pretty uniformly indicated its belief that death was the appropriate penalty.
Now, both sides congratulated each other on a job well done. We're talking about the lawyers in this case. The defense simply had very little to work with, especially after Danny Rolling confessed the details of his crimes to fellow inmates in the Florida State Prison. Tony?
Let's talk about the appeal process for a moment, Ari. I know it's an automatic appeal, but if Danny Rolling wanted, could he waive that right of appeal?
I don't think he could, and I don't think he will. I think his lawyers are going to take care of that. I can tell you this, that what you heard Rick Parker say at the end of my piece just now about this jury not being fair is one of the grounds they will appeal on, that he wasn't granted that change of venue when he asked for it. And he says that a jury here in this community, in Gainesville, was just way too unfairly prejudiced after 3.5 years of publicity, after living through the panic that engulfed this city back in August of 1990.
Did Rolling say anything after the recommendation today?
He didn't say anything that we could see, and his lawyers said he didn't really say anything to them either. He fully expected this to happen. He does, however, plan on perhaps Tuesday at a sentencing hearing to say something to the judge, make some sort of statement.
Okay, Ari, thank you very much. Now, even if the judge recommends death, Danny Rolling can appeal the decision for years.
But the families of his victims, of course, can't appeal. They're left with a lifetime of painful memories and a loss that they'll never be able to replace. Channel 4's Carrie Sanders joins us now with reaction to today's decision. Carrie, you spent the day with many of the family members. Do they seem to be healing a bit now?
Yes, they seem to be clearing another hurdle in a very long process. One of the family members told me that they know it's human nature for people to want to know more about the person, about Danny Rolling, about the person who killed their loved ones. They say they just wish it weren't that way.
That it imposed the death penalty upon Danny.
As the television camera stayed on Danny Rolling, photographers clicked these photos of the families in the courtroom.
It imposed the death penalty upon Danny Harold Rolling.
But those closest to the victims say Rolling's death recommendation doesn't give them what they want. It doesn't give back what he stole.
We just miss her a lot, and we know that nothing we ever do can bring her back. If they kill Danny Rolling, they lock him up forever. Christy will never come back, and so that's hard. That's why this will never be over. It will never be over for any of us.
It was like, now I can start mourning. I can, you know, for Sonia. It was very important.
The families say when you think of what happened here, they don't want you to think of Danny Rolling. They don't want society to pervert his memory, turning him into some sort of celebrated serial killer. They wrote a statement that what they want everyone to remember is what Rolling took away.
We know the last moments of our children's lives. We now know their killer. This is a shallow victory, though. Nothing will bring back Sonia, Christy, Krista, Manny, or Tracy. A sentence of death for us simply means that we will not live in fear that this killer will kill again.
But for the families, as much as they'd like, this is not a day when everything finally ends. If Danny Rolling is like the 339 others now on death row, he'll sit there for more than 9 years waiting for execution.
It shouldn't take 9 years for him to go to get the chair.
It can't take 10 years for him to go to the chair. I mean, why can't the chair just be in the courtroom? I mean, if the chair could be right there. I mean, this guy did what they brought out in this trial was just monstrous, heinous, horrible things that it should not be tolerated.
Now, some of the family members say that they will now actively lobby some state legislators. Among the things they would like to see lawmakers do is pass a law that when somebody is sentenced, that sentence is carried out swiftly. Jennifer?
Okay, and thank you, Carrie. Well, the men and women who decided Rolling's fate certainly won't soon forget what they heard and saw in that courtroom.
They're back home with friends and family tonight after several grueling weeks in court. Channel 4's Edwin Odell now joins us live with their comments plus student reaction. Edwin?
Tony, some of the jurors we spoke to indicated that there may have been some minor holdouts in the beginning, and the jury just had to make sure that they had a unanimous decision on the guilty verdicts. Well, they got that. Some on the outside wondered why it took so long, and one juror we spoke to agreed with that criticism.
From all we had been put through the whole week, or the whole 3 weeks, but almost 3 weeks, you know, everybody was some people wanted to take their time, some people wanted to just get it over. I was one of the ones that wanted to get it over. You know, I was tired. I didn't really want to stay there. You know, stay too long deliberating last night. I wanted to take a break, as I believe almost everybody did. Want to take a break, sleep on it, and come back in the morning and vote.
We spoke to one of 3 men who served with 9 women on the jury. He said this was all much, too much, just too much. He wanted to get away from it, hug his wife and kids, and forget about it for a while. So after the jurors left the courtroom, they rushed over to the hotel where they'd been sequestered for the night, picked up their luggage, then went to the sheriff's department to pick up their cars and scattered to the far reaches of Alachua County. Many of them just didn't want to talk about it. Went to the University of Florida campus where they agreed with the decision, but I asked them if they would have been able to come to the same conclusion if they had to serve on the jury. You saw no room for compassion for this guy?
No, I don't think so. I mean, because it was just, what he did was just too traumatic, too violent, and I just don't think that he deserves to live after doing that.
Do you think if you would have handled it being on that jury and making this decision?
I think it would have been tough, to be truly honest. They say it's not fair that the trial was held in Gainesville, but if you go to any reasonable person and you tell them the circumstances under the murders that he did, I think anybody will feel the same way.
Now, Rod Smith, the state attorney, would agree with that student. One of the criticisms has been that this was not the wrong place to have the trial. Well, Rod Smith says, as a student, say anywhere you take this trial, it was so heinous, so horrific, that any jury anywhere would have come to the same conclusion. Tony?
Edwin, do the students there feel a sense of closure now?
Yes, they do, Tony. It's amazing. During this whole trial, a lot of students have come to get to know it, come to get to know the families, and right now they're feeling like their school was harmed by this. They were personally harmed by it, so this brings some closure to it finally for them, too.
Okay, Edwin Odell, live in Gainesville, thank you very much. Our extensive coverage of the jury's recommendation will continue in less than an hour. At 7 o'clock tonight, please join us for Student Murders Case Closed. We'll take you back to the scene of those horrible crimes, the guilty plea, the sentencing hearing, plus a look at who Rolling will probably join on Florida's death row. That's tonight at 7 o'clock.